Hello and welcome to Culture Illiterate, a podcast where four friends overthink comic book movies and where I am once again taking control and reading the intro. I am the first of your hosts, Jake, and my fact is that I love the Nicole Kidman AMC Theaters intro, and I have no interest in being friends with you if you do not love it. And with me are my co-hosts.
I'm Jason.
I'm Matt. My fun fact is I am tired, but Australia is apparently wider than the moon. Don't quote me on that. I'm just getting this from a Google fact.
You know what's wider than the moon?
Wider than the moon. That's what it says.
Thanks, Matt. Anyways, so I am Sean. My fun fact is that I have a spastic colon. Take with that what you will.
It means he can't shit.
I feel like I have the most energy of all of us, which is good because it'll allow me to get back to my old dominating ways. Let's get into it because I don't feel like this is very engaging. I think we suck tonight. I was going to say actually real quick, throw out rapid fire 3 recs. Fall, Beast, Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. 3 good like horror / thriller movies. All really, really simple, though Bodies, Bodies, Bodies in kind of a different way than Fall and Beast are. But they're just a good time. None of them overstay their welcome. I think Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is really, really good satire. And then Fall and Beast are just a good, simple, like, you know, kind of man versus nature type of shit. So all of those, I saw all 3 of those this week. So they're all pretty good, like not too time consuming, tense movies.
I know nothing about Fall other than it's a guy falling, but how is that man versus nature?
2 women falling.
Is it just man versus gravity?
Gravity is nature.
Is it just man versus
Well,
gravity?
how else would you describe it?
I don't know.
It's not man versus self. It's not man versus...
When I think of nature, I think
man.
more of an environmental theme than I do a man falling, even though, yes, that is true, that I guess would technically be just man versus nature. It's just the funny thought.
But my point is, like, Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is different, while it also kind of has a simple plot and setup. It's different than Fall and Beast, which have this basic, like, human being against just a natural thing to be, like, giant lion, giant fall. Like, it's not...
Giant lion, giant gravity.
Jason fell asleep during Beast. It's actually very good. Jason was just very tired. It's actually a quite enjoyable movie.
I also have a rec for this week, and I'll recommend it on the back of it not being available anymore.
Available legally. Infinity Train. Go check it out. It's fantastic. I want everybody who can possibly go and see it to see it, even though it got canceled, and I'm sad. But and also the fact that it's getting so heavily shafted throughout its entire existence by everything and everyone who made it a thing to begin with. It's such a great show. It's a great little animated thing from Cartoon Network that later moved on to HBO Max and then got kicked off of HBO Max, and now the only way you can find it is illegally. So I recommend surfing the seas for that boy. Support animation in general while you're at it.
Please do.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, they're not doing so great right now.
Fuck Warner Brothers Discovery. Fuck, what's his name? David Zaslav.
Yes.
Fucking dumbass piece of
His
shit.
name doesn't
fuck
matter.
Netflix. Fuck all corporations, but in particular right now, fuck Warner Discovery. And fuck him.
Fuck corporations.
Matt,
You're
you got
talking
any
my language over
recommendations?
Matt's too
No.
bad.
I think he died.
Well, I my brain short-circuited for a second. So this episode we're talking about Batman Forever. It was released on June 16th, 1995. Written by Lee Batchelor, Janet Scott Batchelor, Akiva Goldsman, and directed by Joel Schumacher, and shot by Stephen Goldblatt. It stars Val Kilmer as Bruce Wayne slash my God, Batman, which actually throw in one real quick rec real quick. Watch Val, a great documentary about Val Kilmer. Really emotional. Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face, Jim Carrey as the Riddler, and AMC A-list icon and cinema icon Nicole Kidman as Dr. Chase Meridian, Chris O'Donnell as Robin / Dick Grayson, and Michael Gough as Alfred Pennyworth. Have you guys all seen this movie before? I had seen it several times.
I've seen it many, many times. Many times.
I remember seeing it a lot when I was little and also as a teenager, just because it's a beautiful movie.
No.
No.
Wait, this was your first time watching this?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay, that'll be interesting because I am a noted defender of the Joel Schumacher Batman movies, and I'll get into specifics of why. But my real quick thesis before we get into the plot summary, and I'm not defending it ironically, I don't think it's like so bad it's good. I think it's just straight up good. I think I prefer the Burton movies, and if you go in looking for a Burton movie, you're gonna really dislike it and be disappointed. But ultimately, the Schumacher movies, this and what we'll talk about at another time, Batman and Robin, are the Adam West Batman on a budget. That's what it is. It is Adam West Batman, but you pumped a bunch of money into it, and I think when you watch it in that mindset, it's really enjoyable. So without further ado, the plot kicks off in Gotham City with costume vigilante Batman defusing a hostage situation orchestrated by a criminal known as Two-Face, former District Attorney Harvey Dent. Flashbacks reveal that Two-Face was disfigured with acid by mob kingpin Salvatore Maroni, which Batman failed to prevent, causing Dent to develop a split personality. Edward Nygma, an eccentric researcher at Wayne Enterprises, approaches his employer, Bruce Wayne, Batman's secret identity. I don't know why this plot summary includes that, as if anyone doesn't know, with an invention that can beam television signals straight into a person's brain. Bruce rejects the device, concerned the technology could manipulate minds. After killing his supervisor and staging it as a suicide, Nygma resigns and plots revenge against Bruce, sending him riddles. Criminal psychologist Dr. Chase Meridian diagnoses Nygma as a psychotic. Right off the bat, I think we have to talk about Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey in their respective roles. Specifically, I think Tommy Lee Jones is great of an actor as he is. Straight up sucks as Two-Face. He could have maybe done a good serious one, but he's just trying to be goofy, and it does not work.
We were robbed of Billy D. Williams Two-Face.
It's fucked up that they recast Billy D. Williams, especially since this movie is technically supposed to be in the same continuity, or at least originally. Would have loved to see him actually get to play the Two-Face side of things after being Harvey Dent in the previous films.
I gotta say, he doesn't really have the split personality. It's just mostly him being goofy Two-Face and just being evil and just doing things, you know what I'm trying to say? Like
he talks like we and us, like there's multiple personalities, but he's pretty much almost always, if not always, over the top campy Two-Face, which is also, again, a weird direction to take that character.
He's always playing a villain, and tell the truth, like, he just doesn't play the role well. Tommy Lee Jones is a great actor, but man, he does not, do over the top well.
He's trying to out Jim Carrey from the get-go, and that's just never going to work out.
Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is, like, it's not only is he not great at being over the top, he's playing alongside someone who is known for being like the guy to do over the top kind of shit, and it's just when you have him going up against that, it just doesn't work because Jim Carrey's Jim Carrey and he's fucking fantastic at that.
Yeah, I mean, it also would have been nicer to see him like be super serious next to Jim Carrey, because then it just makes it funnier. And it makes all those over-the-top moments have more, like, weight to them, I guess, if that's the best way to put it.
It's a common character dynamic, but it's common for a reason. It's tried and true to have the straight man and the more over-the-top guy, and I think that would have worked a lot better. I thought you guys were going to pick up and run with that, but it's fine.
No, Jim Carrey is just so good at being the Riddler. It's like, you can't, it's like trying to, you're trying to beat someone at the game that they created, almost. You know what I mean? Like,
from the start, Carrey's operating at an 11, and he never stops. And it's something that, again, it is a particular version of the Riddler. There's a lot of avenues you could take that character, like a lot of Batman characters. But for what they're doing, Carrey's perfect for it. But I don't think anything about Two-Face having the origin be shown off screen after it's just all around just kind of a mishandling of that. And in general, other than you could really remove Two-Face from the movie for the most part in general, because really you could just change it, the Robin origin, jumping ahead to just Riddler is the guy that he's after instead of Two-Face. So there's really nothing interesting or fun about the character.
Yeah, it kind of felt almost like they just wanted two villains in it, and they didn't put they put all the care and attention into, like, doing the Riddler exactly how they wanted to do the Riddler, and then as far as the other villain went, they were just like, oh, well, Two-Face is a prominent Batman villain.
It would have been so much better if Tommy Lee Jones just played like a straightforward character. He just played like an straight up evil character, because then he'll play off Jim Carrey so much better, because he'll be like the straightforward evil guy, while Jim Carrey is just so over the top. They'll have like more fun banter that way. But instead we get Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones trying to beat Jim Carrey, and it's just not as fun as you think it will be.
Thank you for taking the words out of my mouth, Matt.
You're very much welcome.
It would even be better if they just had him actually, have two different personalities, so you had maybe a goofier side and a serious side, but there's also ways to have him be campy and goofy in a different direction than what Carrey's doing, but they're going the exact same way, and it's too much of one thing.
it also just feels so weird because it feels like they wrote in Two-Face on top of them just having what would have been in the beginning some generic mob boss kind of guy who's just causing shit, and Batman's just there, and that's the introduction to Batman in this movie. And it's just it feels like they wanted something that was a little bit more prominent to give like the beginning of the film a bit more of a oomph to it, while Jim Carrey is working his way up to becoming the Riddler throughout. But it just doesn't work well, and it just kind of comes off as weird because as soon as you get to the point where Riddler is Riddler, Two-Face takes a backseat more than anything else, and isn't really all he does is stir shit more than he causes anything like prominent to happen.
Yeah, that's what I mean is like it feels like you could replace Two-Face with like any generic villain and the movie functions the same. Like there's nothing about it that is Two-Face, you know? It's just like Riddler's there and he's like the main guy, and then Two-Face is just kind of there because they needed a second guy.
They also waste Drew Barrymore, who plays like one of Two-Face's two girlfriends, and is just kind of
she has like 3 lines
present,
maybe.
and it's just kind of weird that it's Drew Barrymore.
Also, here's another fun fact: Tommy Lee Jones hates Jim Carrey.
Now, where did you read that?
I saw Jim Carrey talk about it on some like show he did with Norm Macdonald. Rest in peace, Norm Macdonald. And then I looked into it. You can Google it. If you just Google like Tommy Lee Jones, Jim Carrey beef, there's like mad articles about it.
Yeah, Jim Carrey has talked about it.
Yeah, I just didn't know where it came from. So Bruce attends a Haley Circus event with Chase. Weird first date. He also has to go rock climbing for a second date. This guy doesn't get out enough. Bruce asks Shade on another date, but she professes to be romantically interested in Batman instead. Two-Face hijacks the event and threatens to detonate a bomb unless Batman surrenders. Dick Grayson, the youngest member of the Flying Graysons, manages to throw the bomb into the river, but Two-Face kills his family. Bruce persuades the orphaned Dick to live at Wayne Manor as his ward, and Dick discovers Bruce is Batman. So then I know I talked about how I'm a defender of this movie, but I'm going to kind of like, right now the stuff we're talking about is like the negatives to me coming up first. I'm not a fan of an older Robin. I think it doesn't make any sense to this guy who is seemingly college aged. If you want to give so much benefit of the doubt, like 17, but looks definitely college aged at least, needs to be taken in and adopted. And it's just in general, Robin should be a kid. He's supposed to be a kid. Yeah, it's weird that he's not. I don't like that.
He shouldn't be riding in a motorcycle by himself, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think especially like, not to get too much ahead of myself, but in the following movie in this series with George Clooney, like George Clooney looks a little bit older, so it's a little less weird. But it's like in this one I feel like Val Kilmer and Chris O'Donnell, like they just look like almost the same age. Like they look like they could work together.
It's no disrespect to Chris O'Donnell. I feel like if you had him play like a Nightwing in this world, an older version of that character actually could work well. But he should not begin, like we should not be introduced to Robin at that age.
Yeah, I think it's really bizarre that they went that way. I don't like it. I don't think that's how that character should be portrayed.
And I have another minor gripe. The other one is that we had to get into like, you know, Batman's tragic backstory again. We have to know that his parents are dead, and it's weird because when he's having his flashback, he was just basically saying, Alfred, it happened again, 2 bullets. And I'm just like, wait, it's not 2 bullets, because the way Two-Face killed Dick Grayson's parents is by shooting a fucking Tommy gun straight up, and like what was it, he shot all the wiring off, right, and they all fell to their deaths.
Yeah, he was spraying. It was like spraying Tommy gun fire, and they dropped down because there's no net from the stunt. I kind of also, side note, wish we would have heard the thud of them landing. Not even trying to be funny, I just feel like it would have been more impactful while we're on the topic.
With the themes of the film and the tone, it would have been like something around that.
So, determined to avenge his family, Dick demands that Bruce let him join Batman in crime fighting, hoping to kill Two-Face, but Bruce refuses, telling Dick that such an act will only make his pain worse. This internal struggle as to why Bruce feels compelled to continue as Batman even after the death of Joker has been giving Bruce nightmares, for which he begins seeing Dr. Meridian, huge fucking conflict of interest. She gives him a Malaysian dream warden, which is believed keep bad dreams away. Yeah, like Matt said, they really linger on the whole murder of the Waynes and Bruce's trauma in a way that's kind of unappealing for what is supposed to be the third version of, like, the third Batman film in this continuity. I know obviously it kind of like later down the line almost gets looked as separate from the Burton movies, but still at the time of creation, that's the intent. And we don't need to be redoing that shit. We just don't.
That's kind of weird. I don't see the reason why they would choose to focus on it. The only reason I could genuinely see is them trying to give the connection between him and Robin, obviously. But it's like, there's no need, because we already have that inclination from the past two films. And if you're not going to consider it a part of those two films, then it makes sense. But you consider it a part of those two first films to begin with, so it's just like I don't know what purpose it serves to continually focus and bring that to light when it's like, okay, I get it, I've already seen this. And I know that part of that is also the bias of we've seen so many Batman movies at this point, all of them included.
But even not including that, this isn't that, even if this was a reboot, it's not that long after 89.
Yeah, but even then it's like, yeah, that's why it's like, I know there's some bias in it of me being like, ugh, I hate this, but I also understand that it's like, no, they shouldn't have you could have just, it just needed a little one-off thing. You could have just said that, like, honestly, it could have just been something small instead of multiple scenes of him being like, oh no, my parents have died. Oh, somebody dropped a rose. My dead parents.
Yeah, it's just weird because it's like, Batman's origin is so well known that it's like, at this point, you know, at the time of making it, you're 3 deep and you're not giving the watcher credit to, you know, if you just made a reference, I think anyone would be able to be like, oh yeah, he sympathizes with him because he's also an orphan.
And Batman 89 is 6 years ago and was a cultural phenomenon. Yeah. People don't need to be reminded, even back then, let alone watching back. To Sean's credit, is what you were saying, is like, even without the context of how many times we've seen it today, it was too much back then. And it also gets into the weird territory of them like blocking out the guy who plays young Jack Nicholson. Like, it's like, this movie's like references that didn't existed previously. It references Catwoman and the events of 89 and things like that, but also Tommy Lee Jones is Two-Face now, and the origins, like it's really weird that they like didn't the attempt, like the half-hearted attempt to make it the third one in a trilogy, but also not really continuing any of the threads from the first two after Burton and Keaton left. And the only thing that really, Michael Gough was Alfred, and I can't remember the guy's name, but the guy plays Commissioner Gordon, I believe, is the same too, or like really the only things in common. And a little bit of the city aesthetic, but I want to get into that later. So Enigma, inspired by Two-Face, adopts a criminal persona, the Riddler, and allies with Two-Face. Two-Face agrees to help Riddler steal production capital to finance Enigma's new company, Enigma Tech. In exchange, the Riddler promises to help deduce the identity of Batman so Two-Face can get revenge. They commit a series of robberies to finance Enigma's new company and help mass-produce his brainwave device, the Box, which steals information from users' minds and transfers it into Enigma's, which makes him smarter, but slowly begins to damage his mind in the process.
Yet again, the main store device is represented by a sex object.
Yeah, we were talking about that while we were watching, how in Supergirl there is the magic vibrator that causes the hole in Argo City and leads to the actual plot starting.
It wasn't a vibrator. It was like a little drill wand that went... Zzz.
Yeah, that's a vibrator, buddy.
Never mind.
And then this has another oblong device that is used for what we just talked about, which is a very goofy, silly plan, but I think it fits very well with the general tone of the movie. So, where were we? I had something to say, and then Matt started talking about vibrators, and now I'm so thrown off.
I liked that it also looked like a blender. I think that fits so well. It's the dumbest part of it, but I love the fact that it just looks like he took a blender and put glass on it and was like, "Here is my TV box. I will suck I will suck your fucking brainwaves."
It literally looks like it's from a home movie where like, oh, we need something that looks vaguely like some kind of evil device. Just tape the blender on here and, you know, we'll get some glass on either side of it.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Codename Kids Next Door and all of the shit that they made, like, out of household objects. It's just that.
Oh, yeah.
They took a blender.
I like most of the design choices in this movie. This movie has its aesthetic. It is a super camp aesthetic, and it sticks to it. Is very, very into what it looks like. And I think it's kind of just a blast, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's so gay. So gay.
Okay, yeah, we've been like dogging on this film a little bit, but we did enjoy it. Let's not get that.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's just as you kind of talk about some, like I just think the way this plot summary is broken down, it kind of hits on the things that aren't as enjoyable. Because I think when you look at it plot wise, a lot of what's enjoyable about this movie is more in the abstract. It is in the style. It is in the Joel Schumacher, incredible director, very, very gay man, and we need to let more gay people make Batman movies.
There is a lot of sexual tension.
Gay people make movies in general.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of sexual tension between Enigma and Two-Face in this movie.
Oh, they definitely pound it.
I can say that I appreciate heavily that they've kept all 3 Batman movies horny.
Yeah.
In this series.
This is so fucking horny.
This
one, I appreciated it took a different route. This one was much more homoerotic.
I definitely appreciated that. I say what you will, but bat nipples are my favorite.
Oh, but at the same time, the Nicole Kidman's character is just so fucking horny for Batman. Like the second time they met, Nicole Kidman's character turned on the signal to meet up with him, and she tries to seduce him, which almost worked by like taking her cloak off and revealed she only had like what was it, like a top, like a bra, and
little like velvet slip.
Oh,
so
and Batman was looking down, mouth gaping open. He liked what he saw, and they were about to do it, and then Gordon comes in with his pajamas and ruins the sexual tension.
He should have kept going. Gordon becomes Gordon. You have to watch.
Gordon, jump in.
I wanted to pull up while we're on this topic of conversation, a quote that I really love from Grant Morrison. Grant Morrison, if you don't know, they are arguably, I think, the greatest comic book writer of all time. They are, I would say, for sure the greatest Batman writer of all time. If your answer is Frank Miller, congrats, you're so edgy, and you're wrong. So Grant Morrison have a very long, very acclaimed, very beloved run on Batman, and part of like the general gist of it is that all of Batman is valid. You can't erase the ultra dark stuff, and you can't erase the 60s stuff and Rainbow Zur-En-Arr Batman and shit like that. So they have a quote that's I'm going to read here. He's very Plutonian in the sense that he's wealthy and also in the sense that he's sexually deviant. Gayness is built into Batman. I'm not using gay in the pejorative sense, but Batman is very, very gay. There's just no denying it. Obviously, as a fictional character, he's intended to be heterosexual, but the whole basis of the concept is utterly gay. I think that's why people like it. All these women fancy him, and they all wear fetish clothes and jump around on rooftops to get him, but he doesn't care. He's more interested in hanging out with the old guy and the kid. And that's it. I mean, you had old Batman comics they actually ran into issues because Batman and Robin slept in the same bed together, and then you started getting people speculating on them being gay and Robin being a child, and then you have to age up Robin. And it is just general speculation. In the 1960s Batman show and movie, Aunt Harriet was a character that was created because it would have been taboo to have him living alone in a house with 2 men it would have been perceived there's certain
2 men in the same house, they must be having sex.
And this quote is coming from Grant Morrison, who they are a non-binary queer person and probably the best Batman writer ever, maybe just the best comic writer ever in my opinion. I think Schumacher is the only filmmaker so far who has adapted Batman who has understood that element of the character and embraced it, including the people involved with 60s West, because at the time it was kind of more on that the queerness of that was definitely less intentional than it is here.
Keep Batman gay.
And that needs to be leaned into more. Just saying. So at a party hosted by Enigma, an updated and improved version of the box is revealed that it can project fantasies, not just television programs, directly into the human mind. Bruce deduces that if Enigma can project fantasies into his mind, he could also extract thoughts, memories, and information out of the mind. Bruce disables the box and attempts to investigate, but the villains turn on the machine while Bruce is inside. While the box is mapping Bruce's mind, an impatient Two-Face crashes the event in an attempt to draw out Batman. Bruce changes into his suit as Batman pursues Two-Face through Gotham. In an abandoned subway, he is almost killed by Two-Face, but ultimately saved by Dick Grayson. At the urging of his butler and father figure Alfred, Bruce, disguised as Batman, visits Chase to profess his feelings for her. However, Chase explains that she's fallen in love with Bruce now. As Bruce, he invites her over to Wayne Manor to reveal to her his secret identity. However, the Riddler and Two-Face, having discovered Bruce's secret through the box, invade Wayne Manor, assault Alfred, blow up the Batcave, shoot Bruce, and kidnap Chase. As Bruce recovers, he and Alfred deduce that Nigma is the Riddler when they figure out the final clue to his riddle. In retaliation for the attack, Bruce sets off to save Chase and fight the Riddler and Two-Face when Dick approaches him in the Batcave, offering his assistance. Bruce finally accepts Dick as Batman's partner, Robin. I think the most fun part of the movie, like the highlight scene, is Riddler blowing up the Batcave, just throwing bombs everywhere and making puns to himself with all these silly sound effects, and you could just really feel like that's no sound effects or what's happening in his head. Like when he's hearing the wind-up music as he throws the bomb like a baseball, and he's hearing the like plops and everything, and that's ultimately the reason I'm come down so positively on this movie. Is I think it's fun. I think it's a good time. Like I said, I think it knows what it is and isn't trying to be anything more. It's not some masterpiece, but I don't think it's as good as the 60s Batman at being what that is, but I think that's what it's aiming for, and for my money it achieves it more often than not.
Yeah, I'd say like the biggest thing that makes it a positive for me is that like you can tell that the goofy heart is there. The goofy heart is what I want. The goofy heart is what I was given. It was just it feels like it's harkening back to those Batman 66 days, and I kind of appreciate that a lot, given, like, I don't know how to feel about it in the context of what we've had in the past prior to this movie, specifically the first two Batman movies, but I think what I love about it, at the very least, is just how hard it leans into it and how much it tends to understand it. And while I will ding the movie a little bit that it has a lot of periods in between those goofy moments where I find it to be a little bit boring, just because they don't have much filling up that space, and it's either weird sexual tension, which is fine, or just stuff that really doesn't matter. Again, like we said, things like, you know, learning about Bruce Wayne's parents again, or weird shit that Tommy Lee Jones happens to be doing at the time of, you know, whatever's going on. So, like, there are some boring parts in there, but a lot of the goofy stuff is what really hits for me, and a lot of the goofy stuff is what, like, makes it so wholesome and fun. And it just seems to, when it does do it, it gets it, and it understands what it's portraying. I also kind of question, like, when it comes to a production standpoint of, like, how did Jim Carrey have somebody playing the sound effects while he was on set so that he could time it with what he did? Or did he just do that and then post they saw that, like, oh, this fits? I can only assume that it was thought up prior. I'm just curious.
I don't know, it's interesting. I was going to say I would have guessed it was post.
In my mind, I think Jim Carrey is just that good that he doesn't need sound effects. He's
summoning them.
Literally, Jim Carrey is... listen, hot take, I think he's one of the most talented people ever.
I haven't seen him in nearly enough stuff and nearly enough, like, meaty roles for me to have that much of an opinion on the matter.
Listen, and it's not just because I think it's not just the talent, it's the fact that nobody does what Jim Carrey does. You know what I mean? Like, no one can do the type of physical humor and faces and weird noises and voices the way that Jim Carrey can do it. And, you know, now this is just me talking about how much I love Jim Carrey, but I fucking love Jim Carrey, so I don't care. This is my podcast too.
Well, you are very much justified in this sense, because he is just a living highlight reel when it comes to movies. Like, when he's on screen, you enjoy his presence because, you know, his over-the-top nature is just so infectious. You feel that energy. But to answer your question, Sean, about, you know, thinking about this movie comparing to, like, what we had before, it's awful because, like, honestly, like...
What?
This movie... Like, the movies we had before were, like, straight-up masterpieces. And then moving on to here, like, even though it's like it's very much
real
fun.
quick. Are you talking about the Batman movies previously, or holistically? Everything
No,
we
the
watched
Batman
last?
movies.
Okay,
The movies.
What slander are you trying to put on this
I'm not,
movie?
Oh no, I'm not trying to put slander. It's just like you can't compare it to the previous movies because there's
Well,
yeah.
well, that's the thing. They shouldn't be compared because
exactly. But that's the thing,
though.
though. It's like they said this is like this is like a follow up to those movies, but it shouldn't be.
Like at that point, you're comparing like these, as goofy certain moments were in the Burton movies with obviously Joker being such a silly character, whatever. Like they were still at their core very serious movies.
Oh yeah,
and
like,
this is then
elements to
something
them.
like that's not. It's not going for that. You can't grade it harshly on not achieving that.
No, I
'cause
know,
it's not
but like
going
it's
for it.
it's just the fact that they wanted for this to be a sequel to the previous series. They continuously mentioned the previous movies, and they even brought in some of the previous cast for it. So like what?
I was gonna say, well, see, they did, but they didn't. They brought in a little bit of the previous cast, but not a whole lot. They recast most of your core characters, and do away with most of the plot lines. It is one of those things. It is technically supposed to be in continuity. That said, because of the response to Batman Returns and how dark it was and how kind of fucked up it was, they came in at this with like, we want this to be more of a kids movie, and we want this to be an advertisement for Happy Meals, and and that's why actually one of my issues with this movie is it doesn't always go full throttle. Jim Carrey's such a strong suit in the movie because he's a through line. He is the one thing you can always count on to be that enjoyable fun goofiness. The movie as a whole, every once in a while, I think gets a little conflicted. There is supposedly originally like another version of this movie that's like 2 hours and 40 minutes long, and it's much more serious. And it was like what Schumacher wanted, and they were like, no, we want it goofier. And he was like, oh, okay. But that's why it's sometimes a little inconsistent, and that's why I think that's an issue. But as a whole, I agree. I think you can absolutely compare the two in the sense of you can have Burton and Schumacher have very different visions, and you can have compare which vision you prefer. I sure as fuck, as pretty much almost everyone does, prefer Burton's vision. That said, but yeah, you can't grade this off of what it's not trying to do. You can't look at it and say, well, it's not doing this thing that the Burton movies did because it's not trying to. You got to look at how effectively a movie does what it is trying to do. And I think as a whole, it does run into that situation of there's inherent, because it is technically in the same continuity, or at least originally, there is that natural comparison. But the reality is it's just going for such a different thing that I don't think it's fair to line it up because it's not trying to be that.
Like you just can't compare it to the previous two movies because it's entirely its own thing. Like if you do try it, if you do try to, you're just putting this movie. That's what I'm trying to say. I didn't word it very correctly, but I'm just saying like you can't compare it to the previous movies because ultimately it'll be to the movie's detriment because it's so different, and it's all ultimately it's going for something completely different than the previous two movies. And of course, the quality isn't that great compared to the previous movies. Not because of because they didn't try, but because they don't have like Tim Burton, Danny Elfman, and Paul and not I was supposed to say Paul Dini. It's not Paul Dini, but basically they had like an all-star cast working on those movies, and the movies were amazing.
I still only partially agree with that in the sense of I think Schumacher. If you look at Schumacher's filmography, very incredibly talented director. I do think this movie lacks in comparison, especially cinematography and music. It is such a huge downgrade from the Burton films. That said, I wouldn't say it's low quality. I think the production quality in general is very high. I think it's a lot of fun. I think the design's great. I think there's a couple really good shots in there. Like, I don't think it's like a low quality movie, even though I would put it. It's less artistic. I
shouldn't say low quality. I mean, like, how should I say it? It's like low quality since like the script isn't as tight and it's just stuff like that.
Aiming is high.
Exactly. It's supposed to be. It's like that's this thing though. It's like Joe Schumacher's an amazing director, but ultimately this is like more like a studio film. This is what the studio wanted. They wanted a kids movie.
I mean, yeah, but it just again, I agree with what you said. I feel like it's just aiming for something different, and that's why that kind of is okay. It's a lot more lax in what it can do, and it has a lot more freedom to do what it wants, as opposed to being having to fit within a mold that Tim Burton had already created. The other thing that I did want to mention that I none of us had talked to until you mentioned it, Jake, was that the cinematography is the one thing that I do feel is like I don't want to say heavy downgrade, but it definitely is a downgrade, and I don't mean that in the sense of like that the scenes aren't, you know, great, but more in the situation of like there's a lot of camera use that just really doesn't make a lot of sense.
A lot of Dutch angles.
They use a lot of Dutch angles, which is just really strange, and like that's fine to a degree, but the entire point of a Dutch angle is that you're supposed to be tilted sideways to give things a little bit of an something's not right here.
It
because
works.
it's off, and it works in certain situations,
Yes.
but it's used a lot in this, and it's kind of fucking weird.
I just think I'd like to circle back to how much we talked about Dutch angles being used so frequently in Batman 66, and my continuous case that this is basically a love letter to 60s Batman. It fits.
I don't think it's a bad choice. I just think that it's the best way I could put it is that it's not done in a way where it feels goofy. They did it more in situations where things were like more in like action sequences. Like the one that I remember the first part is that first action sequence where Batman's in there and he's fighting all these goons right at the beginning. I also didn't like the editing of that situation because that was the only one where I was like, the editing is kind of weird because it was shifting so much between different shot to different shot and going back and forth between so many portions of the actual sequence that it just was hard to keep track of what was going on. And I don't know if that, because it was the only time that was a problem was the first fight scene. It was nothing else, so that was strange to me. But that was really the only part where there was a problem was in the beginning. Once it starts to get goofy and they have like the Dutch angles and things that like goofier scenes, that it's like, oh, this works, this makes sense, and it goes along with what's happening, and it's kind of like it has that campy feel to it when it's something goofy is going on. But in the beginning, it's not like I had a sense of the tone, and they start off with kind of an action sequence that I'm kind of like, I don't exactly get what this movie is going for until it gets into its own.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely with you on the action too. I kind of think it would have been almost cool if they continued and shot the action almost in the like single cam style that they use in the 60s show, and just like this straight away kind of like uncut steady shot, because it just would have fit the vibe well. I actually think that's a really good point by you. Actually made it sound insulting. And in general, I would just agree that it doesn't, the imagery of the Burton movies like tattoos itself on your brain. This just isn't as memorable for any, there's not shots or moments that like necessarily stick out with you, at least not that jump to my mind right away.
What's the strangest is that they use the Dutch angle effectively. Like during almost all the scenes with Enigma in the beginning are entirely shot in Dutch angles, which makes sense for the character because he's a loon. So like, you know, you see it used effectively, but then you just see it used in like the action scene. You're just like, why is this here? It's a little confusing, but I've been like a negative loon a little bit, so I do want to talk about something I do like. So like basically Batman shows up to save the day. He finds Chase and they immediately kiss, and she immediately tells him to pay him a night visit or a bat visit, if you don't mind. So Batman is of course like a little conflicted because he thinks like, you know, she loves Batman and not Bruce Wayne. And so we get a shot of Chase in bed, naked by the way, and Batman pays her the night visit, and they start smooching, and she compliments his lips, but ultimately she chooses Bruce Wayne, and Batman was just, oh, okay, and turns around and makes like the dumbest smile I have ever fucking seen. And I was fucking laughing. I love that scene. Holy shit.
It's so funny because it's like he still has the fucking Batman cowl on, so like he still just has this like ultra serious looking mask.
The Batman cowl at first, he's like looking at the camera so serious, and then you see the goofy ass smile. I loved that so much. That was such a beautiful moment.
That was hilarious.
It was so tense with sexual tension, but it ended with like a really like goofy, dorky smile, and it just made me laugh.
That was comedic gold.
One of the things that also wasn't brought up much, I feel like should be brought up, was the sets. The sets are goddamn fantastic. Even if they're like, just like Two-Face's lair, I thought that was hilarious a little bit. It's just, and everything with Nigma, everything like with the Riddler's whole like question marks everywhere when he has the giant blender tower.
Oh yeah, like some sets where they only appear for like a couple minutes, but they're humongous sets. Like the Two-Face's lair, it doesn't really show up again, but it's a gigantic lair with with like layouts and it looks so cool. That's all I was gonna say.
Also, the Riddler's drip is just out of this world. This whole movie,
it switches so often, but
yeah,
the weirdest thing is that the onesie is like the lamest one.
The drippiest thing about him is the way whenever he's like rolling the cane down his back, he's so smooth that I'm like, how did you get that coordinated, Jim?
Because he's fucking Jim Carrey. This is what I'm saying. No one else can do this.
His cane game is on point.
I would have loved to see outtakes of him dropping the cane.
Oh, that was
just fucking going flying.
Listen, I bet they don't exist.
I love the sound.
He just knew how to twirl a cane from the start.
Yes.
Oh, another thing I should say is that the sound of when he taps the cane on the floor or stabs it in the ground is actually really fucking cool.
Also, like something about like the styling of the Riddler in this movie when I was younger always reminded me of David Bowie.
I see that. The hair.
The hair, yeah.
I was gonna mention that while we were watching.
When I was younger, it always made me think of David Bowie, and it was like this weird cross section of my life because I was really into Batman. I was also really into music and loved David Bowie, still do. And like, it was just this weird thing of like. This feels like my worlds colliding, even though they have nothing to do with each other. Like, this has nothing to do with David Bowie. I just think he looks like him.
It's just like the over-the-top costumes. It just reminds you a little bit of David Bowie. Especially like when he wears like the mask with like the sparkles, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that one.
Oh, yeah.
And like his hair.
David Bowie
like
vibe.
when he has like the pink hair and it's like up and like,
although
that's so Bowie.
In his last appearance, the Riddler, he has Mugatu hair. And if you don't know who Mugatu is, he is the villain antagonist of Zoolander, and he's played by Will Ferrell. So, you know what? This is my recommendation. Watch Zoolander. It's a pretty good movie.
Yeah, no, I never put that together, but he does look like Bowie, which is funny
My whole
because Bowie
life-
was considered for Joker in '89.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't know if you know that, but he was, Sam Hamm, one of the writers, like really championed it. Obviously, it didn't happen. It went to Nicholson. No one's mad about that, but yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Let me wrap this plot up because I definitely have some thoughts on the finale. It'd be interesting to hear you guys.
No.
Okay, my bad.
We end the podcast here.
No outro, nothing.
You're done.
Cliffhanger. At the Riddler's lair inside Enigma Tech headquarters, Robin almost kills Two-Face but spares him, who holds him at gunpoint. Riddler then reveals that Chase and Robin are bound and gagged in tubes above a deadly drop, giving Batman the chance to save only one, his love or his partner, and asking if Bruce Wayne and Batman can ever truly coexist. Batman distracts the Riddler with the riddle before destroying the Riddler's brainwave receiver with a batarang, overflowing the Riddler's mind and disabling him, and allowing Batman to rescue both Robin and Chase. Two-Face corners them and determines their fate by flipping a coin, but Batman throws a handful of identical coins in the air, causing Two-Face to stumble in confusion, trying to find the right one and fall to his death. Batman apprehends the Riddler and tells him that he is both Bruce Wayne and Batman, not because he needs to be, but because he chooses to be. Revenge is no longer Batman's all-consuming motivation, and he has come to terms with his duality. Committed to Arkham Asylum, Nigma explains that he is Batman due to his scrambled memories, which leads Chase to remark that he is truly insane. Or I believe we should call him a wacko, a clinical term or whatever they say. Yeah. Dumb joke in the movie. I remember just watching the movie and being like, why do they think this is really funny? Her being like, wacko. Is that a technical term? Anyway, Bruce returns the Malaysian Dream Warden that she gave him, remarking he no longer needs it. Bruce resumes his crusade as Batman with Robin as his partner. So, what's up, Sean?
I was gonna say the other thing we didn't mention was also that like Two-Face only flips his coin like 4 times during his entire movie.
Oh, yeah,
I found
but-
that the dumbest shit because it was like so pointless.
I am going to defend that a little bit because he flipped the coin basically saying whether he'll go with Enigma's plan or not, and he flipped it and it's yes, so I assume he didn't really need to do it again because, throughout this entire movie he's going with the plan, so he doesn't really need to do it on occasion. Although, like, I find it kind of weird because, like, this kind of goes to my goes back to my criticism of Two-Face before, where there was a scene where they were going in raiding Batman's house. I call him Batman, it's Bruce Wayne, but Bruce Wayne's house, and he can't like go into the fight because every time he flips a coin, it goes onto like the good side. But he just kept flipping it every time it was on the good side. He just kept flipping it until it got on the bad side, and then he shot Bruce Wayne. That's not how it works, right?
That often is how it works.
Really?
Yeah, he'll listen to the coin, but also like he's gonna like it's basically two sides of what. Yeah, that's very Two-Face. I would say, but I actually one of my issues in general is so. One, I think there's some kind of subpar lighting throughout the finale. It's kind of poorly lit at points where you can't quite make out like people. As a whole, I actually do think it's kind of a fun finale. Like, I enjoy it well enough, and I think it is somewhat clever the way so the characters in terms of the resolutions, Robin has a surprisingly good arc, surprisingly solid arc for such a silly movie. Though I think if Two-Face had survived, it would have been better because it would have made it a little more complete if he had continued to live and exist after Robin chooses not to kill him. And I do like Batman basically allowing Robin to make that choice for himself. And then in terms of Batman's arc, they try to conclude it in a way that he uses Riddler and Two-Face's like neuroses against them to defeat them while conquering his own and, conquering his own duality and realizing he can coexist as Bruce and Batman because he chooses to be and he's not compelled by vengeance, though, and just like Robin isn't. And they're ultimately defeated by Two-Face by his compulsion to flip the coin and Riddler by his compulsion, his obsession with these riddles. But I don't think that's set up super well. To go off of what Sean said, that's like the larger issue I think that's caused by him not using the coin too prominently in the movie. I never felt like Two-Face is like crippled by the fact that he has to flip the fucking coin. So when it comes back to bite him, it doesn't feel that fulfilling. And he doesn't have, because as we talked about earlier, he doesn't really have two different personalities. He's just always goofy Two-Face, really. It doesn't make, like, his comparison of his duality to Bruce's fit, because you don't see it.
I'll defend it a little bit. There is some build-up. It's not strong. It's very weak, but there is build-up. Like, in the beginning of the film, I think near the beginning of the film, Chase does mention that, it was when she was, like, super horny for Batman, and she called him. She mentioned that, basically, the coin was Two-Face's weakness, is that he can't make a decision without it. And that was it. That was all she said. And we completely forgot about it for, like, the rest of the film until that very moment.
Well, I didn't forget about it, but that's in case of show and not tell.
Like it's just like
her saying that is not enough setup. You need to demonstrate how there is no demonstration of it actually really crippling his effectiveness as a criminal and in his daily life. And in general, again, we do not even see him have two different personalities. So the whole mirroring of Bruce's duality and coming to terms with that, and the fact that he is controlled by the accident and then Bruce and Dick both get over their tragedies doesn't fit because you don't really see it effectively. And it's a kind of too little too late at the end, and I appreciate the effort, but I think some of that may come from the fact that this started out more serious before becoming, no, this is going to be a goofy movie, and that's where it doesn't blend as well. It needs to go full throttle one way or the other.
Well, that's the thing, though, is like, at the end, you got to see a little bit of the good side of Two-Face. How he mentions, like, how Bruce Wayne was such a good friend to him. I'm like, why didn't we see this in the rest of the film? It would be a way more interesting dynamic if he had two separate personalities. And they had a chance, right? They had a chance for Bruce Wayne to interact with Two-Face, right? In the circus scene. When he broke in, he was still dressed as Bruce Wayne. Maybe he could have talked to Two-Face for a little bit, and we get to see, the district attorney side of Two-Face instead of, the wacky villain.
I realized we also never talked about, I know Jake mentioned this while we were watching the movie, but when Two-Face becomes Two-Face during the court proceeding and Batman just jumps out of the
soon as acid falls on his face, Batman, like, it looks like he jumps from the crowd to save him.
Batman is actively sitting in, like, the court, like, fucking pews, what do you call them, benches, and he's like in full bat costume jumping out, and that's actually something I really like because it feels so in keeping with the movie and so fitting for what it's going for and for the comics, for the area of Batman that it's pulling from, that you would have a fully dressed up Batman in court.
Right. He's just like, I'm ready at any moment.
But I do want to mention, like, the way they defeat Riddler, it had it had like a good payoff, but like they didn't really build up like how they'll defeat him. Like he kind of just like he made a riddle. I forgot what it was, but he
distracts him with the really lame "What am I?" and the answer is blind as a bat riddle.
And then like he just destroys the machine and just messes with Riddler's mind. But we didn't really like know what was going on until like we saw like the aftermath.
They throughout the movie they talk about how it's the machines funneling the stuff into his head, but it's also messing with it, like, and it's not good, so it's taking on too much at once. And then his brain swells because it was basically everything came in at once and his brain couldn't handle it.
Okay, never mind then.
I mean, to kind of like touch on that, I never really got that whole duality part of like Riddler being obsessed with riddles either, although obviously he has like the riddles that he's sending to Batman, all the stuff, like all the question marks around him, like yes, there's that, but when it comes to a head and the ending is more when it gets like really weird and confusing, because I don't take Batman saying a riddle to the Riddler as him as like, oh, he's obsessed with riddles, that's his whole thing, he's compulsed by riddles. No, I just take that as like distraction. I gave you stupid thing that made you waste your time. I just take it more as like stupid distraction more than anything else than what they could have supposedly.
It would have been a lot better if you had made the riddle A, less of an obvious riddle, and B, something more personal, something that would have really dug at him as a character and the issues he had with his clear inferiority complex and feeling the need to put himself on top. Like, there's things you could have done that I could buy while it would upset him and distract him so much, but it's just kind of a really goofy riddle that even a kid could get. So it's like that is the thing that like made him have to like sit down and put him in like it's just it's a nice attempt, but it doesn't really land for me.
It doesn't really ring true, especially when it's the situation of like they've already gone into like he's getting a lot more in his head. I don't know how better to phrase that than him getting all of that shit going into his brain. So they make the comment that like as he's going forward, his riddles are becoming more unhinged kind of situation, and that he's like able to come up with more thought-provoking riddles, if that's the best way to put it, like stuff that requires a bit more thought to process and get to the end result of the riddle. So like to have that be the thing, that it's like something so easily understandable and something that makes that, again, anybody who's watching could really figure out in like a second, that it just really doesn't make sense as to why is that the thing he gets stuck on? Why is that the thing that confuses him out of everything else? I heard more confusing riddles when we started this with Enigma, but Batman manages to, distract him with this one riddle that requires so much thought to figure it out when it's really not that hard.
I will say I do like the end of this movie. I think the scene of Dr. Meridian going into Arkham, like this shadowy Arkham, to figure out if Riddler knows who Batman is, and then him jumping out and thinking he's Batman, and that like the tenseness and the relief is pretty well done and well shot. And I ultimately love the end shot of them Batman and Robin running away from the bat signal together, coming from opposite sides. I don't know the scenario where that happened, but it's one of those things where it's just like, it looks cool, and that's more than enough. Also, we totally forgot, great homage to Adam West Batman when he drives up a wall in the Batmobile, and you see all the people on the side of the building.
Well, there's that. What about the holy
rusted metal Batman?
Yes, the holy rusted metal. We never mentioned
that
at all.
I had plans to.
We didn't even mention, like, after he destroys, like, after Riddler destroys the Batcave, he still has the Batboat and the Batwing, and the way they revealed the Batwing was pretty cool because it's hanging upside down in like the middle of the cave, and that's really cool.
This Wikipedia synopsis did not help us to praise this movie. I feel like that's the problem, is that like there's so much that's good about this movie, and I hate that it's the plot is the one thing that we're like, what the fuck?
Well, that's the thing though. It's just like the plot is the weakest point, but like a lot of other stuff is the strength, like the performances, the aesthetic, like the sets, and the costume design is also pretty fun. I mean, they're bat nipples and there's a bat ass, but they're fun.
Don't forget the bat cod piece and the all the costumes are so costumey.
Yeah, exactly.
I just know that I feel bad because I feel like it's just every single point that I mention is like me being like, oh wow, that sucked. But it's like, I loved this movie in the little parts because it was so goofy and it was so fun. And like, bat nipples, you can't goopy
Well, the thing is, Sean,
nipples.
is that like it's just unfortunate that the plot is like the weakest part, and we have to read that for the synopsis.
Does anyone have any thoughts on the ending specifically before we go into wrap-up thoughts?
No, not really.
Okay.
No,
Yeah,
I
me
have
neither,
nothing.
really.
I liked it. I mean, like
It was
I
fine.
can't, I can't speak much towards it because, like,
It's like
I liked it.
it's a decent ending. Like there's nothing that really needs to be said.
Yeah, I feel like for me, like it's fine. It's nothing incredible, but as far as plot goes, no part of this movie was necessarily masterfully written or thought out. This is more so of a fun, kind of wholesome vibe kind of movie. So it fit that it wasn't necessarily the biggest grandiose ending. It was fine.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I'll say so. My least favorite thing about the movie's got to be Two-Face. I know we gave lots of nitpicks here and there, lots of criticisms here and there, and the general kind of confliction of tone at points. But my biggest issue is Two-Face. It's the thing that, like, I think you cast someone else, it's better. You cast Billy D. Williams, it's better. You take him out entirely, it's better. You make him more serious and keep Tommy Lee Jones, it's better. Like, but Two-Face just doesn't work. They don't lean into the duality. They don't lean into the neuroses enough. He's just too goofy. He's not on the right wavelength trying to outdo Jim Carrey, and you're just never going to do that. My favorite thing, and maybe this is a cop-out answer, is just the camp in general. For better or worse, I love a movie that you can feel the fingerprints of the director on, and I feel like this feels like Joel Schumacher. If you've ever seen The Lost Boys, fantastic Joel Schumacher film, you can't watch Schumacher's other stuff and say, as much as there was studio involvement in this, you can still see him shining through. And that is like decisions like the bat nipples, which at this point I've kind of come fully around on. They're supposed the bat ass plates and cod pieces and nipples is supposed to like model like Greek statues and Greek gods, and I respect it, and I think it actually kind of weirdly fits with the rest of the movie. I think Gotham isn't necessarily, I don't think it looks quite as good as the Burton movies, and I think some of that's just because it's not shot as pretty, but in general the look of Gotham with these giant ridiculous statues and the statues that are holding up bridges is great. The blacklight gang and that whole section of town that's just all blacklight is awesome. Bruce Wayne's fucking slutty circle glasses. Nicole Kidman is a queen. She's actually genuinely great, doing all the right stuff in this. The Holy Rusted Metal Batman I wanted to bring up, that just like the love for 60s Batman in that era of comics and of Batman specifically is fantastic. To find a way to homage the ridiculous Robin holy whatevers into this, oh no, it's like it is holy like holes rusted metal. It's just it's so fun and it works for me. The corny ending with the running away, it's just the camp. It just, as a whole, the camp and everything that encompasses is the best part of it, and is why the movie works despite its flaws for me. I totally understand why if I was in 1995 and I was going to see this movie, I'd probably hate it, because I would have been coming off of Batman Returns and Mask of the Phantasm in '89 and been like, what the fuck is this? But as someone who watched it actually for the first time as a kid, when I hadn't even seen the Burton movies yet, and can have like a complete detachment and no expectations, I think the movie is good. I think it is genuinely good at what it's doing. I think it's enjoyable, and I 100% recommend it. I just think it's a fun time. It may not be for everyone if you're not into that goofy camp shit, but I think it is very much successful at what it's trying to be.
Yeah, somewhat going along with your least favorite part, but more specifically, my least favorite part is just that they recast Harvey Dent. I think Billy D. Williams, like, obviously he's a legend, he's an icon, and I think he would have done so well as Two-Face, and I think it sucks that he didn't get that chance to be Two-Face. And my favorite part is just Jim Carrey in general. Like, him throughout this whole movie, he's just so entertaining to watch. Anytime he's in a scene, he has everyone's attention. He's that kind of guy in anything that he's in. And I think he's fantastic in this. He's such a good Riddler. Yeah, I have no shortage of praise for Jim Carrey, and specifically in this role. I love it. I love it very much. So yeah, this movie I think is like Jake said, it's doing what it's doing very well, and what it's doing isn't, a Tim Burton or a Mask of the Phantasm type vibe. If you're expecting that, it's like eating a cheeseburger and being like, this is the worst fucking pizza I've ever had. It's not pizza. That's why. You can't go into it expecting something else. So just watch it and have a fun time. Don't think too hard about it. Just enjoy the stupid bullshit that's happening. And I recommend it.
Well, to avoid sounding like a broken record, I'm not going to say the Tommy Lee Jones part because that's what everyone's going to say. So I'm just going to try to find something new. Probably just be like the plot. It doesn't really make sense. It's really goofy. But like in the end, it's what it's aiming for. You're not really supposed to think about it. You're just supposed to enjoy it. So, that's what you get. And for what it aimed for, like the campiness, I like the campiness, especially Jim Carrey. He is the star of the show. He takes over once he is on screen. You can't take your eyes off him, especially when Tommy Lee Jones is there, because you don't want to look at him. And luckily, every time Tommy Lee Jones is on screen, Jim Carrey's there. So, it makes up for it. And so you can still enjoy yourself while you're watching this stupid Two-Face. Anyway, yes, I recommend it. It is ultimately campy fun. It's a decent film. It was really hyped up for me from Jake, and I didn't like enjoy it as much as I anticipated, but I still liked it. It's still a decent film.
Oh, I can't wait for you to see the next one.
Yeah.
I am going to try to approach that with an open mind, but I'll try. I'll try to enjoy it. I'll try to go in with an open mind.
So yeah, I'll start with my least favorite thing. I think my least favorite thing is probably the inconsistency in the tone. Primarily in the beginning parts is where it's more of an issue than it is towards the end of it. But I know that I just wish it would have. It felt like in the beginning it was definitely unsure of whether to pick a lane or not, and then it eventually goes into its own and does pick a lane. But it definitely comes off a little weird in the beginning and doesn't give me when I'm first watching it, my first impressions from the first act don't make me... It makes it a little bit more difficult to understand where the film wants to be and where it wants to go. And then later on, again, like I said, it does come into its own, but it just takes a little bit for it to get there. And that's like probably my least favorite part of it. It's just the movie itself trying to get to that point. My favorite thing is... I would give it to the performances of everyone, honestly. There isn't really... as much as I don't think Tommy Lee Jones should have been doing what he was doing at all, I think aside from that, like, the performances are still great because it feels like everybody, at the very least, everybody understood what kind of movie this was, and everybody sort of knew what they were doing. And it comes across that everybody's kind of there for the same reason, and they all get what's going on. And I appreciate that, at the very least, while there may be some portions of the performances that I wish were done differently, I still think that everybody in the film knew what they were going for. And it's nice to see that cohesion with it. And the other thing I'd just add to that is that, like, this movie is such a great, goofy, fun time. This is gonna be a weird thing, but like, it just reminds me so much as like of being a kid, because I remember watching this movie when I was little so much. So like, it just gives me weird memories of like back when I was just a little kid. So like, it holds a nostalgic place in my heart, and I would definitely recommend it. And it's goofy, fun time.
All right. Well, thank you to Vodmort for our artwork. That's VODMORTE for all of the podcast art. You can follow me, Jake, on Letterboxd at JakeWalter98. I got a list going of all the podcast movies ranked, amongst other things and other reviews. Spoilers, because we record these ahead of time, so the list will be past where we're at. Jason, plug.
I made the intro and outro music for this podcast, and I make other music. That snippet is from a song I'm working on. It's going to be on an EP. I make music. You can follow me on Instagram at the Upsides PA, Twitter at the _Upsides PA. I'm on SoundCloud, The Upsides. You can find me. Listen if you want.
All right, and if you're interested in continuing to check out the podcast, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at illiterate_pod. Our email is culturalilliteratepod@gmail.com if you want to send us your thoughts or any comments or questions. Episodes are on YouTube as well. The channel's name is just Culturally Illiterate Podcast. And next episode, we'll be concluding our Batman-a-thon with the infamous and iconic Batman and Robin. and I will try to be making a Schumacher fan out of Matt.
God, I want it so bad. I want Batman and Robin.
Enjoy.
All I can say, I'm gonna be attempting to be open-minded.